Hey folks, how's it going? This is Seagull here, and welcome to a special episode of my Sims 4 wishlist. I do this every year where I recap the past 12 months of The Sims 4 and talk about some of the things I want to see most next year. It's funny looking back on the intro of last year's edition of this and saying, oh, if 2020 was a disappointing year for The Sims, then 2021 was even worse. Well, 2022 was even worse than that. I have been playing The Sims since 2001, so a year after the original game came out, and I cannot think of a year that was worse than this one. If you adore kits though, you're probably living it up right now, but that is if your game isn't really glitchy. So this year was pretty dominated by kits, maybe to a slightly lesser degree than last year because we had only one game pack last year, but we had two this year. The first thing we got this year wasn't bad though, and that was a Sims Delivery Express drop that was themed all around Korean Hanbo. So that is nice to have even more representation in the game. Towards the end of the month, we did have a small update that introduced a Carnival Beats radio station, which also snuck in the original loading screen theme for The Sims 1 as one of its songs, so that was pretty neat, and that was in preparation for the first kit of the year, Carnival Streetwear. I remember I was a little confused by this because I thought we were getting the game pack first according to the roadmap that we got, but nope, this came along first, and well, it's not my favorite kit ever, but it was a pretty decent one I think, and it actually had quite a few items for a kit. That was not it for February though, because they did put out a free update that finally allows our Sims to start out engaged straight out of Create a Sim, though still no significant other option for some reason. Wedding venues also became an option to assign lots as the World Station was made available for everyone, and some new Create a Sim items to go alongside My Wedding Disaster. Oh boy, My Wedding Stories. This is easily one of the most controversial packs they've ever released in the history of The Sims. It started out with the Sims team announcing that they weren't going to release this pack in Russia due to the pack focusing on a same-sex couple, but after much community outcry, they reversed that decision, thankfully. Sadly, it did not end there because once people got their hands on this pack, turns out that it was so glitchy that Dino could really just eat its heart out because, geez, I mean, for me personally, I don't remember my experience with Dino being nearly as miserable as this one. This was a whole other story. Even before release, it was hard to hide how buggy it was, especially with that SimGuru live stream, and they have tried to fix it a couple of times post-release, but from what I hear, it's still not all that great. A real shame too, because I know the community has wanted weddings improved for many years. The pre-wedding events kind of fall flat too, because they're not really all that different from hanging out, and I remember when I threw my first batch party, at the end all the guests just immediately ran out of the venue without like saying goodbye or anything. It was quite rude, honestly. There are still some good things about this pack, like the world of Tartosa inspired by the Mediterranean, and the Create a Sim items, I think, are pretty decent, as well as the objects. We finally got a couple of actual tea sets instead of just having that boring brewer from the base game. But overall, what a huge failure this pack was. Surprisingly, we didn't have to wait too long for the next major update, which was in mid-March, which brought an upgrade to the Neighborhood Stories feature that we started getting last year to make it a bit closer to what it was in The Sims 3. Unfortunately, it broke many people's saves, though now they did fix that. Towards the end of the month, we got the Decor to the Max kit, and well, the less said about this, the better. My review for this one was one of the hardest videos I've ever had to film because I was just so unmotivated. Just the style is not really speaking to me that much, and so few items too in comparison to even other kits. Apart from that, not much else happened before June apart from some nice Sims Delivery Express drops that included a collab with Complex Sims, some scenarios, including one that made it easier to access plant sims, so that was pretty neat. I think the most talked about one though was the Goth Family overhaul. This is supposed to be the first one. They haven't released any others yet, but they are supposed to be in progress with Sims that they're overhauling up to Henford-on-Bagley in Cottage Living. Just before Pride Month, we did get the ability to customize our Sims' pronouns, though sadly, as of recording this video, it's only available in English. So there you go. Something that I want in 2023 is that update to be available in more languages. But this is a pretty decent step forward in terms of representation. There was hardly any room to breathe in June. There was so much that happened. There were 2 Sims Delivery Express drops that included Pride content, some oversized Logitech headphones, and some Juneteenth content as well. We also got 2 kits that came out at the same time, Moonlight Chic and Little Campers, and I was shocked. I actually really like both of them. The Little Campers kit in particular I think had a decent amount of love put into it, and it's my new favorite kit overall. But of course, we gotta talk about not just the best part of June, but the best part of the whole dang year, werewolves. Yeah, wow, I did not expect this pack to be so good. I was a little worried at first, especially since it wasn't that long after my wedding stories came out, because something like this would have made a lot more sense to release during Halloween, especially since we did not get a second expansion pack this year. But yeah, this is definitely the best version of werewolves we've ever had in The Sims, just like what the Vampires game pack did for vampires. The gameplay had a decent amount of depth that didn't feel too similar to vampires, the lore was amazing, the objects are really cool, and the clothing too really needed more grunge stuff, and this pack delivered on that. The world, yeah, it's too small, but at least it is a lot better than Forgotten Hollow. It's fun to roam around in, it's quite pretty, especially Lake Lundvik, and it's apparently inspired by Canada, which is where I'm from, so that's pretty cool as well. I even remember the Simgurus being unusually excited about this pack. It was like Strangerville all over again. They all came out with all these really cryptic hints, because now, especially since the pandemic, I've noticed only a few Simgurus are really consistently active on Twitter, but this brought back like almost all of them, I think. We also haven't had a decent occult in The Sims 4 in a very long time, so this is a win we really needed, and thankfully they came through. Even the free update alongside it was pretty good. We finally got lunar cycles back and not being limited to the pack, and we got the normal size telescope. They also brought back the death by meteor, though the animation for that leaves something to be desired. Sadly though, those vibes only lasted for an extremely short time because very soon after, they announced high school years, and I think even before Werewolves released, this expansion pack already leaked. So it was already questionable that they were focusing a whole expansion pack around just high school and not also elementary school, but then not quite as bad as my wedding stories, but the pack, yes, released very buggy. I don't even know if prom still works properly, because I know that was like a big thing. So this pack ended up breaking my attachment to The Sims 4. I've hardly played it since then, because there's just like a limit for how much BS you can put up with, and that was it for me, because my wedding stories was awful, but at least it's like, if you're not throwing a wedding, then you're probably going to avoid all the issues, but High School Years integrates a lot more into the core game, which normally is a good thing. But with it being so buggy, it's like, oh, I really wanted to dive into this pack that actually gives teenagers some more uniqueness compared to young adults. But yeah, I was not feeling it with how many bugs there were. Oh yeah, I almost forgot to mention its free update, because we did get the ability to customize sexual orientation. We got body hair finally! I've been begging for that for years, though I still feel like the custom content that we got from Lumia Lover Sims is better than that. I'm surprised they didn't collaborate with him, since he does work on their trailers now. And we did also get a major overhaul of the phone user interface, and we do have curved walls and wants and fears, but those two things are very buggy. And then, even though that pack only came out in July, things died down pretty quickly for the rest of the year. There were 4 more kits that released, and 3 of those were collabs with content creators, because they collaborated with X Urban Sims X on First Fits, Evelyn Sims for Desert Lux, and Plumbella on Pastel Pop, and then there was the Everyday Clutter kit, which wasn't a collab with any content creators, but definitely a kit that was highly requested, so that was kind of neat. One major plot twist with one of the kits is that they made Desert Lux free for a while because the Sims 4 base game became free. Now those are a couple of things I never would have thought would happen, especially with The Sims 4 being 8 years old. I mean, Fall Guys going free to play after a couple of years, okay, but yeah, that was a huge surprise to me. Of course, there were also a few more Sims Delivery Express drops here and there, like a collab with D-Sims that brought a couple of hairstyles to the game, and some video game collabs too, because they had a poster from It Takes Two, and some stuff from Mass Effect, and also some stuff from Dragon Age that they didn't really promote for some reason, so that's why I never covered it. Oh yeah, I guess I'll mention the Sim Summit here, even though it was announcements and not, like, actual game content. But we do know that The Sims 5 is finally happening, but it's just called Project Renee right now, and we're getting 2 expansion packs with Sims 4 next year, as well as an infant's life stage. So, interesting. I'm a little intrigued about next year, but I'm not expecting the year overall to be any better than 2022 was. As far as positives go, Werewolves was a positive. A lot of the free content was pretty good, but also very glitchy, which is pretty bad. The kits did improve in quality, especially towards the middle of the year, and at least a few things on my wish list got crossed off, such as Active High School, even though that wasn't as developed as I hoped, Werewolves, Body Hair, Lunar Cycles, and the phone overhaul. Plus the promise of the infant's life stage early next year, which is, well, not quite improved baby since it's a separate life stage. I don't know if they're going to improve the object babies at all, which is what I wanted in the first place. Alright, so onto my general wish list for 2023. Yeah, of course, cars are my most wanted thing. We've gone through this discussion so many times. No, cars are not useless in a closed world. Play The Sims 2. It's great. And yeah, cars, please. Please! EA Maxis, if you need ideas, please, I'm more than happy to be the next Simmer content creator to collab with you. But another repeat from last year, Generations. Yeah, I mean, sure, we do have my wedding stories and high school years adding to the list of stuff that's being separated out from Generations, but I still don't think Generations is completely off the table. It's probably just gonna have a different focus than what The Sims 3 Generations had, which, I mean, it's a pretty common thing for them to do with The Sims, to have them do a similar theme to the previous Sims games, but not copy it exactly. I think it'd be really fun if they did a combined idea of Generations with The Sims 2 Free Time, so it's focused around family hobbies instead of it just being general gameplay additions to the various age groups. We have so many expansion packs over the years that they're running out of ideas, so I think at some point they will have to do Generations. Project Renee is years away, so I'm guessing we have at least 4 expansion packs left. So getting those 2 obligatory ideas out of the way, 2 things that are much higher on my wish list now than they were before are bands and hotels. Like, those are the first 2 things that I actually think about now concerning 2023 and The Sims 4. With bands and hotels, I think they could both fit pretty well into game packs. Maybe you could stretch out bands into a full expansion pack if you have a good amount of instruments and genres to work with, and also be able to add a singer, because in The Sims 3 you are not able to do that. Singers were just completely separate in Showtime. Have a decently sized world so that there's a good amount of venues to perform at, just right out of the box without feeling super obligated to add venues into the other worlds right away. And just expand on the band's lifestyle in general, like not just having live performances, but getting into the recording booth and recording albums and doing photo shoots for things like posters and other merch. I think then that could be pretty fun. Plus, it's just so weird that we haven't had a new musical instrument in a very long time. I think the last one might have been the pipe organ in Vampires, so we don't even have a basic drum kit like this one. So that's just another reason to do a bands pack. I mean, a lot of people noticed that, hey, that's kind of weird, there was no music club in high school years, so maybe they're just saving all of that for a bands pack. When it comes to hotels, I'm not actually just asking for resorts like we've had in The Sims 2 and The Sims 3. I'd also love the ability to run Airbnbs and bed and breakfast to expand upon, I guess you could say, the formula of that. So I think that could make for a really interesting game pack. Considering that just before Snow Escape came out in 2020, we've had the ability to vacation in any world, like, we really should get hotels before the end of The Sims 4's life cycle. It only makes sense. I'm really surprised that we got Dream Home Decorator and werewolves before hotels. I know some like bringing up the idea of adding hotels through an island living refresh, but I don't think that makes sense. Island living is not the same thing as The Sims 2 Bon Voyage or The Sims 3 Island Paradise that focus so much on tourism. Because island living is all about Polynesian culture and being environmentally conscious, and hotels would clash very hard with both of those things. It is kind of funny that in the game files, one of the neighborhoods for Sulani is named Resort Island, so I think initially they were planning on having them in island living and then came to that actual realization that no, this doesn't really make sense. And plus, if they did add hotels in an island living refresh, I would expect very little else to be added there, because it would take a lot of effort to add in this whole system for this refresh, which would not make the pack cost any additional money. And on top of that, there's just so many things they could add to island living that would fit in a lot better with the theme. I mean, we can't even follow our Sims when they're scuba diving. So I think they could add a lot of things to island living and then leave hotels to be better fleshed out in a game pack where you could also have Airbnbs and bed and breakfast. And I mean, if they gave the same love that they did to werewolves, then that would be fantastic. Oh yeah, not to mention the very real possibility that pack refreshes are never happening again, because we went through all of this year without a peep about them, just like with stuff packs. That silence has been going on even longer, so I'm just assuming that pack refreshes are completely cancelled, unless they just announce another one. A few of the things I'd love to see for the base game is to improve neighborhood stories further. I actually did a whole episode of this series just about that, so feel free to check out that video if you haven't seen it before. I'd love to see another base game world, even if it is just like Newcrest where it's completely empty so I could just go wild with my imagination and create tons of new Sims. But I think a cool idea would be like a new populated base game world that incorporates everything we've had added to the base game, because The Sims 4 in 2022 is very different from what it was in 2014. One last thing is the matter of burglars. They're the last iconic NPC that I want to see return from the previous Sims games that has not already. They'd add more danger and realism to the game. It would also be really fun if we could adjust the crime rates in each individual neighborhood. So, for example, in Del Sol Valley, I could make Mirage Park have a high crime rate, while the Pinnacles have a low or zero crime rate. Considering that vampires have been able to break into Sims houses for a long time in The Sims 4, it's so bizarre that they're not in the game. Now with high school years, there is a sneaking animation that exists, so they could just reuse that for burglars. And really, just fix the bugs. There's so many bugs in this game, and it does make me worried that next year's packs will make things even worse than they are already. But I would really love to hope that 2023 can renew my interest in The Sims again, because yikes, it really fell off this year after high school years released. It's just so odd, like nowadays, I feel like The Sims 4 is a dying game, except for a couple of months in the year where they just pump out everything at once, but then it quickly goes dead again. I mean, yeah, sure, there are some of you out there who are far more cynical than me who would jump at the chance to say, where have you been? The Sims 4 has been a dead game since September 2014, and to that I say, haha, so funny, but that's not what I'm talking about. This is a different kind of dead. This isn't just some dead on arrival thing, this is something that has gone through its ups and downs, but now it just feels like it's being run into the ground even harder. Project Renee is becoming my last hope for The Sims to ever return to at least something close to its former greatness. So there's an extra wishlist item right there. More announcements regarding Project Renee, even though I'm not expecting them that soon in the year. And, well, this is a different wishlist entirely that it would go on. Man, that's kind of funny to think. Eventually I'm going to be doing my Sims 5 wishlist, but yeah, still a long ways off, I guess. But anyways, I'm going to wrap up this episode of My Sims 4 Wishlist here. Feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What did you think overall about this year? What are your favorite parts? What did you not like? And what do you hope for in 2023? And be sure to subscribe if you'd like to keep up with my latest gaming content. I will talk to you all later, and have a great day. Thanks for watching!